And right now, we're introducing the rest of the team because the whole of the SABC is fanned out, not just across the country, but here at the Rock as well. We've got every inch covered for you.
We certainly do, and this is it's a big moment as we now count down, as you can see in the corner of the screen, literal seconds, minutes and hours until those stations around the country open for everybody to go and vote. Of course, today is our focus on special votes, but that was today and yesterday, but that ends at about 5 o'clock today, and then of course we are then going to go to the polls. Everybody is able to go. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about some past experiences of elections, how the world is viewing this, and politically, how have we found the run-up to these particular elections? Well, we've assembled a star panel to discuss exactly that. We've got our SABC News International Editor, Sophie Mokoena, who is with us today, SABC News Political Editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, and our SABC News Research Editor, Dr. Ronesh Dhawraj. So nice to have all of you here, sitting at the SABC all these years later on the eve of elections. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where the SABC normally would showcase to South Africans. We are, after all, the representative of South Africans. When a big occasion like this, we have to show up and show off.
And that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
Indeed, indeed.
So if we can get into it, so special votes cast yesterday and today, but unfortunately, Sophie, it's a bit of a rocky start in some instances. As we said earlier, we look at some parts of the Eastern Cape, you know, where people could not cast their ballots. I know the IEC came out and said in certain instances they had not indicated to people whether they would be arriving yesterday or today. Well, that's one issue, but there were actually instances of protest or other violence that prevented people from voting in certain places. So let's just reflect on that, given what is to happen tomorrow. If you take a place like Mthatha, for example, where yesterday it was said people couldn't get in and out of the town. So if that situation is not taken care of, what does it mean for this election?
Well, part of the preparations during elections is to ensure that the security is in place. You have to identify the hotspots. They have done just that. But then it is not the responsibility of the Electoral Commission to deal with those eventualities. It is the responsibility of the state. Let's go back to the President's address on Sunday. The very important issue that he touched on was the issue of security. Because it is the responsibility of the state in any country to protect its citizens, to ensure that its citizens are able to exercise rights that are accrued to them in line with the constitution or the laws of that country. You're talking about police, you're talking about the South African National Defence Force, you are talking about the intelligence services. And therefore the question is, in the Eastern Cape, did the police intelligence do its work in terms of knowing or anticipating this? Then you can move to the national intelligence itself, whether they were on the ball to understand where you might have hotspots so that you can deploy accordingly. Because it is not the responsibility of the Electoral Commission to provide security. They run the elections. So I think it's something that they have to tighten before tomorrow. Other eventualities, sporadic protests are normal, particularly this time, because that's where communities feel that the cameras are there, the politicians are watching, we will be able to communicate our grievances, and those you can manage. But you can't drop a ball in terms of anticipating areas that are a hotspot. And the president spoke about that, and that's what the nation wanted. And he did assure the nation, but then you had that challenge. So they will have to ensure that by tomorrow, this is sorted out. In fact, today, those citizens must be able to vote.
Let's continue on this trajectory, and I think you raised some very, very important issues, Sophie, in terms of what the IEC are in control of and what, of course, the government needs to be in control of, and particularly with the police, the SANDF. I mean, we heard that they were called in yesterday as well. So I want to speak a little bit about some hotspots areas, and those are the ones that we really do take heed of and we watch very, very closely on election day all the time. It's nothing new. Eastern Cape has popped up, but KwaZulu-Natal is something that I think we need to keep a very serious eye on, one that we've always kept on the radar, but I think things will be even a little bit more. Things like Nongoma, Ulundi, eThekwini, hostels in KZN. You've got the entrance of the MK party that's there now, IFP, the ANC, the EFF. We've got all of these parties contesting, and there are a lot of tensions in these areas. Talk to us about these kind of things.
I think one of the things that perhaps as we were even doing the build-up to the election and the coverage, so we identified a few provinces because of the nature of what has been happening there. Particularly when you look at the entrance of the MK, in terms of the rising political temperatures, so we had to then take notice of what exactly is happening there. And the fact of the matter is that a province like KZN, given its past history, you can't then take a chance and just relax, especially when you see the contestation is so high. I mean, even now, we have identified that province as a battleground together with Gauteng and the Western Cape. Why do we do that? It's because of the huge political contestation. And then sometimes that contestation, particularly from the parties that have been together, tends to be very, very violent. Fortunately, in the main, so we have been largely peaceful. We haven't seen the acts of killings that had been witnessed before, which I think is credit to the maturing of our democracy, and I think we need to continue the trajectory. But then we saw certain incidents in the past 2 days where I think members of a political party then storming a warehouse of the IEC, and that then talks to what you are speaking about in terms of the hotspot. As much as there is that tolerance, but you can see that the tensions do tend to rise. They just need to be managed in a particular way. So far, I would say so far so good in terms of the political management, and I think if the country can then build on that, we will probably be a better country going forward.
Dr. Ronesh, Dhawraj, if we look at voter turnout, which is of course going to be key to the fortunes of these parties, and of course we can philosophize about what a different voter turnout would mean for each of them, but looking at the provinces, and if we look back to the previous election, what the turnout was, do you think, given the importance or the importance being attached at least through the media and other avenues to this particular election, that we are likely to see a higher voter turnout?
Absolutely not, Sakina, and I'll tell you why. Not many people are aware of the Section 24A notices that actually people had to apply to the IEC, to the Electoral Commission, before they actually go to a different voting station to vote. This is kind of consistent with what happens in local government elections, where you're only allowed to vote at that particular VD or voting station where you are registered. That changed. There were amendments to the Electoral Act quite recently, so people have not been made aware of those changes. So what's going to happen tomorrow? I somehow predict chaos. Recently, we had the CEO of the IEC coming to the SABC, talking to SABC staff, editorial staff, and one of the questions I raised was, in 2019, we witnessed the lowest turnout for a general election in South Africa since 1994. Lowest turnout in 2019 was 66%. In provinces like KZN, Free State, Mpumalanga, turnout was 10% lower, Eastern Cape 8%, Western Cape 7%, and 5% lower in Gauteng. So the fact that people are not fully aware, they haven't been appraised of what the Section 24A notice actually means. Tomorrow, I somehow predict chaos. And when people get to those voting stations, they will be turned away. people will create all sorts of things on social media. You know, social media will just ignite. 66% in 2019. I somehow predict, with those kind of problems, with those kind of chaotic things that we are preempting, I somehow foresee turnout, hovering anything between 50 and 60%.
Sure.
If the IEC, it's not only the IEC, it's also the responsibility of political parties. They should have informed voters in time. Just this morning, a very good example, we were on our way from the hotel in the shuttle, SABC shuttle, to the IEC center. I was talking to the driver and another SABC colleague. They were totally unaware of the Section 24A notice. This guy told me, he's registered in Soweto. He's going to vote somewhere in Midrand. I said, no, that's not possible. And he says, no, I'll just go fill a form. Like happened, like it happened before in 2019, previous elections. You just go in, you fill in that form, your address details, that kind of thing. That option was taken away in these elections, and not many people are aware of that.
Well, I have to tell you, it was actually a big fault on the IEC's behalf, and I'll tell you why, because I was doing some homework on behalf of other people to say, no, I'm sure you can still go and vote. You're in another province, but you can vote on the national elections. Had a look on their website. This was on Sunday. On Sunday, they still had a notice on their website saying, you can, as long as you sign that particular document, when you get to the voting station, you can vote in another province. I then heard them retracting it and saying it's a mistake on their behalf. They should have updated the website. Now, you cannot do that the day before people go to the polls, because people to now get back to your place where you've registered, where you lived, where you are, you had already thought you could vote in the national elections, wherever you are at the time, but you can't. So you may have a very big point there, Ronesh, in terms of voter turnout.
It is a very, very important point, and many people are going to be quite surprised tomorrow. So just to reiterate, the deadline for the Section 24A was the 17th of May at midnight. If you did not apply, if you did not make an application to vote elsewhere, you have to go to the voting station where you are registered.
That's it.
And you can still go onto the IEC's website
and check
where exactly you are registered to vote. But you cannot, even if you are in the same province, you cannot go to anywhere other than the station where you are registered to vote.
That's a very important notice.